decades now, the world has bought into one computer system or another. The rise of the internet driving on the need to process, compute and get connected online, from Word documents and printing everyday order of business to downloading, watching movies, making Zoom calls to hold meetings online, and just about everything you can imagine related to information of any kind. In 1957, the transistor was invented. This was to be a critical building block for computers and replaced the large lowing valves that were employed for decades in old radios and the like. This was a real turning point for the world of electronics. At the same moment, with Sputnik, the space race was sparked, and this gave way to a decade of energetic competition between the US and the Soviet Union.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
That came to a head when America won that race and dominated the course ever since, with Armstrong's landing on the moon in 1969.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Oh, that looks beautiful from here. It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of the United States. It's different, but it's very pretty out here.
But the computer on board the Apollo spacecraft was larger than a big suitcase and was made of discrete components soldered onto circuit boards, including those all-important transistors. Yet, that was only to be the dawn of it. By 1974, Motorola released its 6800 processor on a chip with 6800 transistors microscopically integrated onto a single chip. A decade later came the 68000 IC, or integrated circuit, its name reflecting the increased scale of complexity. By then, the IBM Pc had been introduced in 1981 with rival technology from Intel. Throughout that decade, Motorola's chips were run in Apple computers' machines, giving rise to the first Windows-type system available commercially. Today, almost everything uses a Windows-type environment. But by 1990, a PC or Mac was wildly expensive, and at this point, mostly universities and big business employed these. Also, Apple 89, later to be loosely clung by Microsoft as Windows 95, was very simple by today's standards. So it was not like these devices would set the world alight. They were limited in what they could do. Then, in the early 1990s, the internet was announced as a new invention. I recall Isaac Asimov first explaining the idea.
Be something you're interested in knowing. From an early age, however silly it might seem to someone else, that's what you're interested in. And you ask, and you can find out, and you can follow it up. And you can do it in your own home, at your own speed, in your own direction, in your own time. Then everyone will enjoy learning. Nowadays, what people call learning is forced on you, and everyone is forced to learn the same thing on the same day at the same speed in class. And everyone is different. For some it goes too fast, for some too slow, for some in the wrong direction. But give them a chance, in addition to school, I don't say we abolish school, but in addition to school, to follow up their own bent from the start.
Actually, people could not quite get their heads around the concept, and many in the 90s did not know much about computers to begin with. The older generation were largely alien to it. The internet services were not yet established enough to spark such enthusiasm. Many people had not seen it in action at all, and were not motivated to learn about it. By the early 1990s, we still had dial-up modems utilising the slow network, only 56k speed, you remember. And from home, the service was primitive. around that time, Amazon came on stream, plugged as the Earth's biggest bookstore. For many, it was the first online shopping experience. In those formative days, Amazon only sold books and music CDs, but just about any title you could name. Not only that, they quickly built up a review section for each product sold. This was to foreshadow the internet of today, especially the commercial internet. I recall spending hours reading this section alone. For someone who loved books and music, this was pure heaven delivered via a computer screen. When I compare the days of childhood with only one TV and one radio station and sparse local libraries, it was clear that the internet could be a miracle. And Amazon were the first to flex the muscles of the HTTP protocol in a very convincing way. Today, its CEO, Jeff Bezos, is the world's richest man. Small wonder, as for many, Amazon is now part of life. As the years rush by, more technology and speed is introduced rapidly. Broadband connections are ever present now and sought after. Touchscreens and tablet technology abound, and who could forget the landmark Apple iPhone? Yes, that same company, as Steve Jobs in 2007 caused a sensation by converging the worlds of mobile phone with PC, calling it a smartphone.
Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. These are not three separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone.
Nowadays, you could do just about anything on a smartphone if you wanted to, whether it's an Apple or an Android device. And, as was perhaps inevitable, another idea arose from this world of abundant touchscreens and computer power. With so much capability, could we not take a minimalist approach and see how small and cheap we might make a real-world useful PC? Well, in 2009, the Raspberry Pi Foundation was formed in the UK with the goal of delivering a cheap and small PC board to the world for about €25. This is spelt PI, as in the mathematical reference pi. The aspiration was to introduce children and poor countries to computers and offer them the opportunity to learn how to operate and program computers. By 2012, the first Raspberry Pi was released to the public. It had 4 USB ports, an HDMI connector, and ran a basic Windows-type environment, implying a capable Linux operating system. With the dimensions of a credit card and about half an inch thick, it was remarkable enough to fire up the public's imagination, even if the performance and specifications was a bit raw and some configuration had to be done. Quickly, a whole community blossomed of Raspberry Pi fanatics, followed by the Pi 2, which was improved. But version 3B, as it is known, was the first PC that could really be considered as a possible replacement for an everyday desktop PC, especially if you were on a budget and needed to get many PCs, like an internet cafe, for example. With its Wi-Fi and LAN port for connectivity, as well as its 4 USB ports, high-quality graphics and improved Raspbian operating system, which used the heritage of Linux, this little piggy really went to market. By the end of 2019, over 30 million Pis had been sold. To actually use it, you need a power supply and you must connect it to a TV screen, internet, keyboard or mouse. It is now grown into a whole subsector and is employed by hobbyists, educators and commercial ventures. If you are building systems in robotics, for example, you might use it, or a mobile system like a bus or a boat. The Pi can be used to computerize and program everything imaginable. The myriad of accomplished projects based on the whole ecosystem of the Raspberry Pi is staggering, growing by the day. The latest offering from the Pi Foundation is the Pi 4, which is 3 times the energy consumption of the Pi 3, using about 15 watts. Has 8 gigabytes of onboard RAM, random access memory, and 2 mini HDMI ports. This can be used as a powerful building block for projects or as a compelling and cheap everyday computer. At a cost of under €100, you can get a Raspberry Pi starter kit, which includes all you need. For a few dollars more, you can even get the Pi desktop kit with its own color-coded keyboards. Then there are the screens available, including 5 and 7-inch touchscreens. With a Pi, you could be a kid or an adult, working or having fun. Compare this to a cost in 1979 of £3,200 plus VAT for an Intel 386 motherboard, which came with no peripherals and could not even run Windows system at that stage. You might say we've come a long way. Ironically, to this day, with so much information being streamed to us in an instant, we scarcely have time to absorb it or indeed reflect on it. We humans have not been developing nearly as fast as our electronics.